Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Lazarus. There's one thing that's really important in daily runs, and that's to regain your composure. Of course, you can't really do that when you're dealing with an item like Fire Mind. It's one of those items which is very potent, but also very damaging by itself. And the problem is, well, I would call it a problem, but I would just say it's a very balanced item in that regard, because not only do you get the benefits of just having that extra damage over time, and also the chance of you producing fire on the ground, and because of that it's a really potent item, because not only can it take you from killing an enemy in 3 shots, for example, down to maybe just 1 shot, and then the fire damage does the rest, and maybe sometimes you just end up with an explosion which deals damage to every single enemy in the room because they walk over it. So in that sense, it's a very potent item, because there's always a chance for that one explosion to damage you, it's also a very damaging item in that regard, and it's really up to you to decide whatever the negatives of this item or were the positives. And I feel like that really depends on which course or stage of the run you encounter this in, but early on, when you really have no idea on how the run is gonna work out, I feel like it's pretty much a must pick up, because it helps you so much with clear speed and just the damage that it gives you, and just the potency that you get by having these fire tiers. It does allow you to deal with enemies so much more efficiently, especially, like I said, if you don't get any DPS upgrades or maybe even other items. What I would say maybe is the best thing about this item is that it synergizes pretty well with other items. Like any explosions will leave a fire on the ground, and that's pretty much always a positive. Or maybe if you have something like Brimstone, what's gonna do is inflict the fire damage over time, but it's not gonna have the explosions. So regardless of which synergy or item you get that works with Fire Mind, you're gonna be left with only the positive and not the negative part of this item, which I feel like is a really good idea. But also there's always the items which just mitigate explosions by itself, so it's really, I think, if you get this item early on, it's too early for you to say, I'm not picking this up. But if you do find it later on in the run when you're already strong enough and you really need that extra offensive punch, just because of that added negative association that it can damage you, then maybe it's not worth picking up in the first place. The only complaint I would really have about this item, besides what I just said right now, is that it triggers, or at least the explosions can trigger on your bombs or the troll bombs. And I feel like that's such a big detriment. This is one of the biggest things what I hate about this item. It just makes you play a bit differently, and well, that can be good in some situations, but the fact is sometimes you just want to drop a bomb down and navigate it through the room with your tears, or maybe sometimes an enemy spawns a troll bomb and you want to push it away with your tears. But when you're dealing with Fire Mind, you really can't do that, because there's always a chance of it exploding in your face and dealing even more damage. Or maybe what's even worse, what can end up happening is you shooting a bomb, then damaging the bomb. Because of the explosion, the bomb is propelled maybe to the right or whatever. You try to dodge in that direction, then the bomb hits you anyway. So it's like double whammy in some sense, and there's really nothing you can do about it. I feel like if it wasn't for that fact, this item would have my stellar recommendation, but just because it does have some of these negative association values with it, then I feel like it's a pretty much a situational item. But in this particular case, I felt like it was a good pickup early on. Luckily, the run did evolve into some degree of survivability and some utility, things that we got going for us. Later on, like in this case, we just got a bunch of shop items which obviously help out, so things like Steam Sale, the Sack of Sacks are obviously helpful. The Temperance card is gonna help us kind of contain that swag bonus later on, so in that regard we're pretty much set. But the thing that we're really missing now is the offensive punch, and again I stuck with the old trustworthy blue candle to kind of help me out in that regard, and I feel like it really did. I'm getting a new appreciation for the candle items. I feel like whenever a run is weak and maybe not that strong, when you have a blue candle or even the red candle, those items can really help you deal with enemies so much more efficiently, especially if you can angle your shots right. It's one of those active items that I really enjoy. It's very much in the same vein as my telekinesis item, where you need to be very active in how you use it. And obviously it's a very decent item because it has an infinite recharge time, but it can either be super effective depending on how you use it, or it can be really, really ineffective on if you maybe miss a shot or whatever. But in this particular case, I feel like it did its job well. It did get me to boss rush, and for that reason, I'm very thankful for picking this item up early on. You can see that I dropped the Temperance card down, and because I have the Polaroid, I've decided to play it. My end goal here is getting the Ivy Bag, which is luckily quickly, which is something I've gotten. If I didn't get the Ivy bag here, I might have just opted out to skip this boss rush and just go out. And the reason, of course, why I brought the Tempest card in is if I just stayed outside and if I was forced to go out or whatever, then the boss rush would close. So I just felt like it would be safer if I stayed in here. So I decided to play it. I got the Ivy bag, and then of course I can use the Ivy bag for the invincibility, for the polar invincibility. Whenever I get a red card, I can just use that. But because I also have the Fanny pack, there's always a chance for me getting more hearts or maybe cards or any other consumable whenever I use it. So it just felt like the right play to do in this situation, especially with the Swallowed Penny and the Piggy Bank. Whenever I played the Ivy bag, I just got a ton of coins, which obviously helped the consumable bonus, and it just felt right. And for that reason, I feel like I was done with boss rush in a relatively fast amount of time. What maybe the mistake I've made here is I've spent too long exploring the rest of this floor. What I should have done here is really just go to the next floor. As soon as I saw like the 25th minute mark, I feel like if you have 5 minutes left on the last two floors, you're pretty much set off, especially with a strong item like Epic Fetus. But I decided to explore for some reason. You can see we're nearing the 27th minute, which is just leaving me in a bit of a bad spot. I could have even mitigated that in some regard. If I did take the Awo's Rune, I could have popped that at the end of the run, or at least when I felt like I was in dire need of just getting to the next floor, and that would have allowed me to be a bit faster. But obviously there's always the chance of me running into dead ends or maybe enemies which just don't calm down or maybe have a lot of invisibility frames, and especially with an item like Epic Fetus, it's really hard to time and kill those enemies unless there's a whole bunch of them in a room. So I'm left in a position where I really have to make a run for it. And you can see here, I'm at the 29th minute, so I have only like a minute remaining in order to get to the boss, which should be doable if I don't get unlucky enough. But again, of course, with some of these room layouts, I run into dead ends. There are a lot of bosses which have too much HP for my taste, and that does end me stranded in a position where I really can't do much to the boss. I did miss boss rush, Hush, by like 10 seconds, so it's not that big of a deal, but I feel like if I only exited the floor like 30 seconds earlier, I would have been able to get to Hush, but also I would have been able to pretty much complete every objective that I had to. I did get the chance to explore the rest of the floor, and especially with Mom's Key and relatively high luck with 6, I did get enough chests, so that kind of was worth my time. But still, when you think about it, it's not really the most optimal use of my time, and I do wish that I had some other ways of going to Hush, like if I got Mama Mega, but I feel like Ivy Bag in this situation is a bit too valuable to pass out on, especially with all the items that kind of complement it and do allow me to get even more consumables. I wasn't too upset by it because I knew there was always the next floor and there was always more chances. So I just decided to stick with the Moon card and the Algius Rune for the obvious reasons of just being a bit more invisible if I do encounter a boss or whatever when I'm trying to fight it. I was thinking of saving it for Mega Satan because this is a Mega Satan daily, and that would have definitely helped me out in regards to that, but I did decide to use it on a Blood Bank, I think, at some point. I just felt like getting more points and consumables would be a better idea, or at least a better usage of my time. But what ended up happening is that the Blood Bank exploded within 2 plays of each other, and that was, again, quite detrimental and kind of unlucky, but I'm not really too surprised because I feel like whenever you do pop an Algius Rune or any kind of shield, the Blood Banks do tend to explode just to spite you and just to show you who's boss, I guess. But with this regard, I did mention that we get Epic Fetus, and this is exactly what I was talking about with Fire Mine. You can see that we leave the fire trails on the ground once the Epic Fetus explosion actually explodes, and that doesn't damage us. So we did take out the negatives of the Fire Mine, and we're only remaining with the positives, and it does allow us to utilize this item somewhat better. I'm very glad to have this item in this regard now because it did help me deal with enemies somewhat efficiently, especially with static enemies like Isaac. You just drop a bunch of bombs on him and the fires do quite a significant amount of damage. It's also very useful against larger enemies like Mega Satan because you just spawn a bunch of rocks there and then the fires deal passive damage while you're dealing with some other enemies in the room, or maybe while you're just trying to dodge or whatever. It's really good in that regard, and I feel like it does require some special mention that I did get this synergy that I was looking for early on. It did come a bit late. I did get Epic Fetus only after boss rush, but in all regards, that's not too late into the run. And I feel like sometimes the run really pops off at like Womb 1, Womb 2. Those are the last floors where you actually get the items, because there's always that opportunity of getting another Devil Deal, or maybe because you get the boss rush that can really contain some goodies and that can just help you out on your journey. But of course, we also got Mysterious Liquid, which synergizes pretty well with epic fetus, and besides the fire we also leave a giant puddle of creep on the ground. So pretty much now whenever we have an enemy which is stationary, we're not gonna be only doing damage with our rockets, we're also gonna be doing damage with this damage over time effects, which just remain on the ground and are just passive. But it's also really good for clearing out rooms and enemy control and AoE and things like that, because it does allow you to just deal with enemies a lot more efficiently. So with that said, I did just enter boss rush. I hit myself with a rocket here because what ended up happening is I tried to aim at Mega Satan immediately. So what I did is I put the cursor up, but of course when you enter the circle your character freezes in place, so the bomb drops right on top of me when I froze in place, and there really wasn't much I could do about it. I did get hit a few more times, so that was kind of a bummer, but just because of the nature of the run, I felt like this is gonna be something where a lot of people would get hit. Obviously with items like Fire Mine and Epic Fetus, you can't really escape damage that much, or at least that often, so I didn't feel too bad about it. I did pick up the trophy, I did beat Mega Satan, I ended up with 34,000 and something leftover points and 68th place, which is just a little bit shy of top 50, but not that bad in all regards. I thought I was gonna do much worse because I heard, or at least I read after, about people finding a D6 very early on, and obviously if we had that, our chances, or at least our prospects, would be a bit more positive. And especially with those golden bombs, there was no reason for me not to explore the entirety of the floor. I did try to blow up some rocks, but obviously I wasn't lucky enough to find the crawl space that contained the D6, and it did end me in a position where I feel like I'm not that terrible in 68, but there's a lot of room for improvement, obviously, just not taking as much damage or just getting too harsh, which is entirely possible if you follow the route I followed. So I feel like I'm gonna be dethroned in some sense and my rank is gonna get pushed down, but I can't be too upset because it was a fun run, it was a bit different, it did require me to kind of look in a different direction to try to find a good score, and I feel like it did achieve that, so at least we have that going for us. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this one guys, and I hope to see you next time.